July 26, 1944. A French farmer steps onto a train platform in Nuvik, hands raised. Behind him, 12 men with stolen rifles. In front of them, an armored Bank of France carriage, Vichy guards aiming machine guns at his chest. One twitch, and everyone dies. But the farmer isn't holding a weapon. He's holding a fountain pen and a crisp document demanding they hand over 2.28 billion francs. A legal requisition form for the entire Nazi war chest in southwestern France. The insane part? The guards don't fire. They read the paperwork, sign the receipt, and help unload 150 sacks of cash. Within 34 days, the last German soldier flees the region. The farmers have just pulled off the greatest heist of World War II without a single shot. How did a piece of paper defeat machine guns? And why did armed guards surrender a fortune? Summer 1944. Occupied France is hemorrhaging. In the oak forests of Dordogne, a guerrilla army is swelling. Hundreds of new recruits flooding the resistance camps after D-Day. Young men slip out of Périgueux and Bergerac at midnight, vanishing into the Maquis. Even veteran farmers trade plows for hunting rifles. Weapons can be parachuted from London. Courage is abundant, but money is gone. Within 3 weeks of the Normandy landings, the local resistance faces a crisis no bullet can solve. 1,200 fighters, and not a single franc to feed them. Allied High Command radios a maddening directive: hold tight, wait for supplies. General Marie-Pierre Koenig, commanding the Free French forces from a London basement 400 miles away, advises the Maquis to lie low until arms and funds arrive. But on the ground in Dordogne, wait translates to watch your men collapse. The generals do not see what Léon sees every morning: young men too weak to hold their rifles steady. In farmhouse barracks scattered across the countryside, battle-hardened guerrillas grow skeletal. Rations shrink to 1 meal a day: thin potato soup, stale bread crusts, occasionally a rabbit snared in the woods. New recruits' uniforms hang off their shrinking frames like burial shrouds. One fighter jokes that they will beat the Germans once they learn to photosynthesize. Nobody laughs. Desperation is rotting morale from the inside. The resistance promised to protect the French people, not pillage them. Yet last Tuesday, a cell of starving fighters broke into a butcher shop in Sarlat at 3 a.m. and stripped the shelves clean. Bellies were filled. Honor was gutted. The butcher was a sympathizer. He did not report the theft, but word spread. If this continues, the Maquis will lose the trust of the very civilians they are bleeding to liberate. Two options loom like executioners: disband the resistance and watch the Nazis consolidate their grip on southwestern France, or become bandits, forsaking the moral high ground that separates freedom fighters from thugs. Both paths lead to defeat. Then, on a sweltering afternoon in mid-July, a bicycle messenger skids into camp with a whisper that changes everything. He carries intelligence from a sympathetic clerk inside the Banque de France branch in Périgueux, a man named Raoul, who has been tallying Vichy regime reserves for months while feeding information to the underground. The numbers make Léon sit bolt upright. Billions of francs are stockpiled in the bank's vaults, 50 kilometers away. Every few weeks, an armored train ferries a portion of this fortune south to Bordeaux, where it funds German military operations, pays collaborator salaries, and greases the machinery of occupation. The next shipment leaves July 26th, 4 days from now. The cargo, 2.28 billion francs in paper currency, packed into 150 burlap sacks. Léon's jaw tightens. 2.2 billion, enough to feed, arm, and pay every resistance fighter in 4 departments for the rest of the war. The camps would never go hungry again. The messenger unrolls a railway map on an ammunition crate. His finger traces the line, Périgueux to Neuvik to Bordeaux. The train is a rolling fortress, he warns. Armored carriage, reinforced doors, 4 to 6 guards with automatic weapons. A frontal assault would be suicide. Blowing up the tracks risks incinerating the cache. But Léon is not thinking about explosives. He is staring at a small dot labeled Neuvik and the spiderweb of dirt roads surrounding it. A plan is crystallizing behind his eyes. This is not a robbery. This is a requisition, reclaiming the money of France from traitors and invaders. The Free French government in exile would approve. But to succeed, they must stop a train that never stops and extract its cargo without firing a shot. Léon places his finger on Neuvik. We make them hand it to us. The other fighters exchange bewildered glances. Hand it over? How? Léon straightens. Legally. What document could possibly convince armed Vichy guards to surrender a national treasury? And why would Neuvik, a village of 800 souls, become the stage for the largest heist in French history? July 26, 1944. Dawn of the operation. Resistance scouts have spent 2 days sabotaging railway signals farther down the line toward Bordeaux. A forged telegram now circulates through Vichy dispatch offices. The tracks near Libourne are compromised, possible Maquis activity. It is a social hack executed with pencils and telegraph keys instead of dynamite. The outcome: the 5:30 p.m. Bank of France train from Périgueux receives orders to halt at Neuvik station temporarily while engineers assess the route. Exactly as planned. Neuvik is selected with surgical precision. The station lies off the main highway, away from constant German convoys rolling between Bordeaux and Limoges. Winding back roads snake into the surrounding hills, perfect for a fast extraction. Most critically, the village is quietly sympathetic. The station master, the postmistress, the baker who supplies bread to German officers, all have lost someone to Nazi occupation. A brother deported to a labor camp, a cousin shot for curfew violation, a father who never came back from Gestapo questioning. They understand the stakes. If this operation fails, reprisals will be merciless. Only 5 weeks ago, SS troops executed 52 civilians in nearby Musadan as punishment for a Maquis ambush. Men, women, and a 14-year-old boy lined up against a church wall and shot. Everyone involved in the Neuvik plan knows a gunfight at the station means massacres across the Dordogne. They must execute this clean, or not at all. By 7 p.m., Neuvik-sur-Lille station falls silent. Villagers have been ushered indoors. The few lingering on the platform are trusted souls with specific roles. In the distance, a column of black smoke appears above the tree line, growing larger. The locomotive chugs into view. To a casual observer, it looks like an ordinary passenger train. Green carriages, weary civilians pressed against grimy windows. Could the intelligence have been wrong? The hidden fighters exchange nervous glances. The train slows, brakes hiss. Then Léon moves. He vaults onto the locomotive's footplate, revolver drawn but aimed at the ceiling. The startled engineer spins, sees the tricolor armband of the Maquis. A frozen beat. Then the driver allows a faint smile. He nods toward the first carriage. "Premier wagon," he murmurs. "First wagon. Confirmation. This is the treasure train." If you are impressed by the audacity of what happens next, hit that like button. It tells me you want more deep dives into real-life heists and acts of defiance that changed history. Subscribe now, because the next story makes this train robbery look like a warm-up. Like clockwork, the platform erupts. Resistance fighters swarm from behind every post, bush, and luggage cart surrounding the convoy. Passengers gasp and duck beneath seats. In the armored wagon, 4 Bank of France guards yank pistols from holsters and brace against reinforced steel doors. They expected a routine run to Bordeaux. Instead, they find themselves encircled by armed farmers, outnumbered 5 to 1. Standoff. The guards hold the high ground inside an armored car, weapons trained outward through firing slits. The Maquis have numbers, but almost no cover. Sweat drips. Trigger fingers tremble. One flinch unleashes slaughter. For 60 seconds, nobody breathes. Then, Léon steps into the open, hands raised. The farmers watch in disbelief as their commander holsters his revolver and walks directly toward the carriage. A guard's muzzle tracks his chest. Another shouts, "Halt, or we fire!" But Léon keeps climbing the wagon's metal ladder. "Parley," he calls. "Let's talk." 2 guards seize him the instant he pulls himself inside. They shove pistol barrels under his chin. Léon stares down the muzzles without blinking. "I'm not here to take your lives," he says evenly. He pulls a folded document from his breast pocket. "I'm here to take this." He nods at the stacks of burlap sacks filling the car floor to ceiling. The lead guard's eyes flicker to the sacks. He knows exactly what is inside. His duty is to protect that money for Vichy France. But Vichy is dying. Germany's grip on the region is slipping by the hour. Léon speaks softly now, invoking something larger than politics. "This money belongs to the French people. We are requisitioning it for France." He extends the paper between his fingers. A bon de réquisition, complete with official-looking seals, signatures, and a blank line for the guard's name. The guard's trigger finger slackens. A requisition? His superiors in Bordeaux are fanatics, but also obsessive about paperwork. A signed receipt, in triplicate, might be a lifeline. If he surrenders the money without a fight, he is a traitor. But if he surrenders it with proper documentation, perhaps he lives to see September. The pistol wavers, then lowers. Incredibly, he motions to his men to unlock the vault doors. Outside, the resistance fighters watch stupefied as the steel doors swing wide. Léon hops back onto the platform, waving the signed form like a battle flag. A cheer erupts, quickly muffled as they remember the passengers and the German patrols that could be anywhere. But it is done. No shots fired, no blood spilled. The guards even help decouple the money carriage and roll it onto a siding. The greatest heist of World War II has just been executed with a signature and a bluff. But Léon knows something the cheering fighters do not. They have exactly 15 minutes before German command in Bordeaux starts asking questions, and 6 tons of cash does not move itself. What happens when the telephone rings and the Nazis demand answers? The first sack hits the platform with a dull thud, bursting a seam and spraying banknotes like confetti. 2 fighters scramble to scoop the bills back into the burlap. No time to admire the spoils. 150 sacks, 6 metric tons of currency. 15 minutes to move it all before a Luftwaffe scout plane or a German convoy stumbles onto the scene. The clock is already bleeding. They form a human chain from the wagon to the trucks, passing sack after sack in a rhythm of grunts and curses. Sweat carves channels through the grime on their faces. Arms tremble under the weight. Some men laugh through their exhaustion, a giddy, adrenaline-drunk high. Others mutter prayers. Wealth has never felt so heavy. In the station office, a telephone jangles. Everyone freezes. It is a call from down the line, German Rail Command in Bordeaux checking on their late train. A quick-thinking maquisard presses his carbine barrel against the station master's ribs and nods. The station master answers in a trembling voice. "Yes, everything is fine." He parrots the rehearsed lie, an unscheduled loading of boots and uniforms for the Wehrmacht. Minor delay, nothing to report. A pause stretches into eternity. Then, the line clicks dead. The Germans bought it. For now. Sack 130, 140, 150. The final bag lands on the pile in the lead truck. They have it all, an entire national treasury crammed into 2 overloaded lorries. Leon checks his watch. 15 minutes exactly. As fighters scramble into the vehicles, a few villagers peek from doorways. Instead of cheering, they hum Le Chant du Départ, the old revolutionary anthem. The refrain drifts through the evening air as the convoy revs its engines and pulls away from Nuvik station. The lead truck lurches onto a dirt lane, springs groaning under 6 tons of currency. It is an ancient gasoline lorry requisitioned from a dairy farm. Behind it chugs a converted wood gas truck, a mobile furnace powering a wheezing engine that sounds like a dying accordion. Both are overloaded past any safe limit. Leon rides shotgun, knuckles white on his rifle, eyes scanning the tree line for German headlights. He knows these backroads like his own heartbeat, every blind curve, every muddy stretch that swallows tires. But he also knows German command will piece together the truth within hours. A train does not simply vanish. The plan called for splitting the loot between 2 trucks to distribute weight and reduce risk. But as thunderclouds gather overhead and the first fat raindrops splatter the windshield, the second vehicle begins to lag. Its jury-rigged wood gasifier sputters on the hills, starved for oxygen. Soon, it is 100 meters behind. Then, 200. The convoy grinds to a halt in a muddy hollow as rain explodes from the sky in sheets. Under flickering lightning, men dash back and forth, transferring sacks from the failing truck to the surviving one. Thunder masks their shouts. The driver of the lead truck, a mechanic named Gilbert, winces as the chassis sinks under the added weight. 6 tons of fortune now rides on one set of bald tires. The rubber bulges. The engine screams in protest. "Easy, girl," Gilbert whispers, coaxing the truck forward. The convoy, now a single overloaded lorry and 3 escort cars, rumbles on, leaving the broken-down vehicle to rust in the downpour. Midnight. The storm has passed, leaving mist and puddles. The convoy crawls through a silent forest, headlights extinguished to avoid detection. They are behind schedule, but nearing the rendezvous point at Saint-Rieu. In the distance, an owl hoots. Then something else, an engine. Leon signals a halt. Everyone kills their motor. Far behind, on the wind, a low rumble approaches. Not thunder. Trucks, multiple vehicles moving fast. Could be reinforcements from Périgueux. Could be a German patrol racing up from Bordeaux. Either way, the resistance is a sitting duck. One overloaded truck on a narrow path, no fuel to spare, no chance of outrunning military transport. Leon's mind races. If they are caught with all the money in one place, it is over, not just for them, but for every village that sheltered them. Reprisals will be biblical. He makes a brutal call. Split up, scatter the fortune, regroup later. He turns to the men in the truck bed and whispers, "Get ready to dump and run." Headlights slice through the trees behind them. They are coming. Leon clambers into the back and kicks 3 heavy sacks off the tailgate into the brush. "Go!" The driver floors the accelerator. The engine howls, dragging the weight back into motion. A half-dozen partisans peel into the woods on foot, each hoisting a sack or 2. The rest stay with the truck. By the time the unknown pursuers reach that misty hollow, the resistance and their billions have vanished into the night. But who exactly is chasing them? And how will a dozen scattered farmers protect a fortune spread across miles of enemy-occupied countryside? Scattered across the Dordogne, the farmers play a high-stakes shell game with 150 sacks of loot. The rendezvous at Cendrieux is no longer a single gathering. It has splintered into a dozen secret drop-offs and hideaways. Every man who grabbed a sack must decide where to bury his slice of the fortune before dawn. There is no map, no master list. If one man is captured and tortured, he can only betray one hiding spot. The decentralization is deliberate and terrifying. Two fighters dash into a barn outside Vergt, persuading a sympathetic widow to let them dig beneath her cow's stall. The animal watches with liquid eyes as they shovel dirt over burlap in the moonlight. Others lug their sacks into the woods, heaving them into limestone caves known only to local hunters, caverns so deep that German flashlights will never penetrate. Two men on a motorbike, balancing a sack between them like a third passenger, roar toward a sawmill safe house near Musadan, leaving no tracks on the rain-soaked roads. By 2 a.m., the rain-soaked banknotes of Nuvik are hidden in haystacks, church crypts, root cellars, and hollow oak trees across 40 kilometers of French countryside. The fortune has become a ghost. Daylight brings the Nazi manhunt. Enraged at the disappearance of their money train, German officers and Milice collaborationist police swarm the region. Roadblocks spring up on every highway. Search parties fan out through villages. At Nuvik station, the station master is beaten and interrogated, but he sticks to his story about shoe deliveries until the furious SS finally give up. In town after town, farmhouses are ransacked, cellars probed with bayonets. A column of Wehrmacht trucks rolls past a hedgerow where 3 resistance fighters lie motionless in the mud, a sack of francs wedged between them. In one hamlet, a squad of Germans storms into a barn, certain they will find the treasure. They rip apart haystacks, overturn barrels, stab pitchforks into the dirt, coming within inches of a sack buried the night before. They find nothing. Down the road, a Milice officer interrogates a trembling farmer's wife. Has she heard anything about bandits with money? She shakes her head fiercely, hiding the fact that 2 sacks of francs are literally propping up her kitchen table beneath the floorboards. The temptation is staggering. These are humble people, school teachers, apple growers, mechanics, each suddenly alone with a sack containing millions. A life-changing fortune that could buy mansions after the war. The thought flickers through some minds. One bag could disappear. Who would know? But pride and patriotism slam the door. This money is sacred, stolen not for personal gain, but for the liberation of France. One young fighter, drenched from the night's ordeal, sits guarding a cache in a church crypt. He could pocket a bundle and vanish. Instead, he lights a candle, clutches his rifle, and prays. If they give in to greed, they are no better than the occupiers. By the 3rd day, the Nazis are empty-handed and desperate. Rumors reach German command of what actually happened. The Free French stole their treasury in broad daylight. The occupiers do not broadcast this humiliation. But a German commander in Périgueux rants that he will burn 10 villages if that is what it takes to recover the Reich's money. Time is bleeding out. The resistance leaders realize they cannot sit on a dragon's hoard forever. They must convert these francs into real fuel for the fight, and fast. How do you spend 2.28 billion francs without alerting the enemy? And what happens when the Nazis discover exactly who signed that receipt? What the Nazis intended as the lifeblood of occupation becomes poison in its veins. Practically overnight, the resistance in Dordogne transforms from a starving guerrilla band into the best-funded army in France. Those billions of francs flow like oxygen through the underground networks, reaching every cell from Périgueux to Sarlat. Farmers are paid fair prices in cash for the food they provide. No more requisitions at gunpoint, "No more I owe us" scribbled on scraps of paper. For the first time since the occupation began, the Maquis eat fresh bread and meat at every meal. New boots replace the wire-bound wrecks that have carried fighters through 4 years of war. Uniforms are tailored. Field hospitals receive morphine and surgical supplies. The transformation is so complete that German intelligence officers begin reporting a mysterious influx of resources to the French resistance, never guessing they are funding their own destruction. Léon oversees distribution with an accountant's precision. Money flows to field hospitals treating wounded resistance. It buys train tickets and forged papers for downed Allied airmen escaping south to Spain. It bribes informants and even German officers willing to sell intelligence. In one instance, a Waffen-SS supply sergeant in Bordeaux accepts a stack of francs to misplace a shipment of ammunition, which promptly finds its way to Maquis rifles. The occupiers' riches are literally fueling their own defeat. The greatest coup is the use of cash to liberate prisoners. In late July, the renowned writer André Malraux, codenamed Colonel Berger, languishes in a Gestapo cell in Toulouse. The Nazis plan to deport or execute him. Instead, a resistance intermediary posing as a collaborator approaches with an offer, a small fortune for Malraux's transfer. It works. 1 week after the Neuvic heist, Malraux walks free, spirited into the woods to rejoin the fight, his life paid for in Nazi cash. All across the region, the pattern repeats. Money talks, and the Nazis' own money screams betrayal. Wehrmacht units are bewildered to find checkpoints abandoned, fuel depots sabotaged, garrisons melting away. Local French commanders have been bribed to stand down. Others have simply lost the will to fight an enemy that seems infinitely resourced and uncannily informed. Villagers notice that occupiers who once strutted now look over their shoulders in fear. On August 29, 1944, 34 days after the Neuvic heist, the last Nazi forces flee the Dordogne. The tricolor flies again over city halls from Périgueux to Bergerac. Exhausted Maquis fighters ride into liberated towns on trucks purchased with banknotes still bearing the portrait of Marshal Pétain, the Vichy leader. The irony is savored by every French patriot. Pétain's own treasury financed the bullets and bread that ousted his masters. In the jubilant weeks that follow, most of the stolen money is formally turned over to the reborn French Republic. But one artifact of the operation is preserved, never spent. In a dusty archive in Paris, a yellowed slip of paper dated July 26, 1944, still exists, the receipt for 2,280,000,000 francs, signed by a baffled Bank of France official and a resolute resistance officer. Proof of perhaps the greatest bureaucratic heist in history, a regime that worshipped order and obedience, undone by its own paperwork ritual. One mystery lingers. In the chaos of that stormy night, a single sack, roughly 15 million francs, vanished without a trace. For decades after the war, any farmer in the Dordogne who built a suspiciously fancy new barn was met with knowing winks. Perhaps he found the Neuvic jackpot buried in his field. The receipt is the final insult, a quietly triumphant footnote to the war. The farmers of Dordogne sent the Nazis the bill, and the Nazis, in their arrogance, paid it in full. If you want to see another group of ordinary people who pulled off the impossible against a tyrannical regime, watch the video on screen now.